Hey everybody, it's Greg Martin here. Strap on in and put on your big boy pants. It's time to listen to Pop Goes Your World with Derek Myers and Chris McBrien.
If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes. And while you're there, please leave us a rating and review.
And now it's time for our feature presentation.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
Episode 216, 1980 Pop Culture Fantasy Draft. McBrien along with Derek Myers, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. Time for another pop culture fantasy draft. So Derek and I are going to be drafting a team this week of 3 movies, 3 TV shows, and 3 songs, and 1 personal pick, all from the year 1980. So it's going to be great. But before we get started on our draft, Derek, were you able to get in any pop culture over the last week?
Absolutely. You know I did.
No, you always do.
I always do. I unfortunately did not have a chance to watch any documentaries, but I saw a couple of new ones dropped on the streamers this week that look pretty good. So between this show and next show, I got a couple of documentaries lined up.
Oh, that means we get the song again. We get the song.
Yeah, you get it next week. You get to play it. Maybe you even get to play it twice, depending on how much time I can find.
I can't wait for next week.
Yeah, I had a chance to watch a few movies, and I mean, none of them were as great as Harvey that we talked about last week, capital C classic Harvey, but I have a good one and I have a couple of okay ones. And then I want to talk about a podcast that I listened to, which was movie related. So we'll start with the movies. So big movie, very flashy Hollywood movie that was just recently released on HBO Crave here in Canada is the movie Venom, Let There Be Carnage. This is the sequel to the Venom movie, which is a spinoff of the Spider-Man movie franchise, but is not technically a part of the Marvel franchise because it's this whole thing with Sony owns the rights to Spider-Man, but they're not technically a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But Spider-Man is a crossover with Sony and the MCU, but Sony still has the rights to a whole bunch of Spider-Man stuff. So they made this movie Venom based on one of the Spider-Man villains. And so the sequel came out last year. And I didn't really care for the first movie that much. Honestly, I never really cared for the Venom character. I didn't think he was that interesting or exciting. But he's got a huge fan base, and they made this first movie, and it made a bunch of money. And then the sequel came out, or I guess they were making it around the start of the pandemic. It came out last year, like sort of mid-pandemic. It did okay money, but it was like a pretty big Hollywood-style movie with lots of special effects and post-production stuff. So there's a ton of cash rolled in there. Anyway, I watched it this week. It was pretty bad. I mean, I didn't really care for the first one. I thought the second one was even worse. I couldn't believe I actually watched it all the way through. I thought, well, maybe there's some redemption here towards the end. Maybe something will save this crappy movie. No, it was pretty bad. But I guess if you liked the first one, you'll probably like the second one. It was just sort of more of the same, but yeah, I'm giving it like a hard thumbs down from me. I was not a fan.
You know, when you mention Venom, the first thing I think, because I'm old, the first thing I think of is there was a movie back in 1981 called Venom, and it was with Klaus Kinski, and there was like this big black mamba snake, and it got into like the HVAC in this building, and it would like come, and bite people and stuff like that. Oh man, wow. It was pretty bad. You got to go back to the time. Like this is where everything was like a takeoff of Jaws in some way. This one was a snake inside the walls. Look out! Like, yeah. All right. Your new Venom was probably even better than that one. It was pretty awful.
Yeah, it was. It was not great. I mean, it looked okay. Again, when you put that much money on the special effects, some of the scenes are really going to pay off visually, and it did. But it all took place at night. It all took place in the rain. It was hard to see. And the Venom character is black, and the villain character Carnage is like dark red with black. So even with all these special effects going on, a lot of times it was sort of hard to track what was happening. And yeah, anyway, I think we spent more than enough time talking about that Venom sequel.
And the one from 81 for that matter.
Yeah. All right. There was, so I I like stand-up comics. I've seen a lot of stand-up comedians on Netflix, on Crave.
Do you have a favorite?
HBO.
Do you have a favorite stand-up comedian?
One of my current favorites is Tom Segura. He's got, I think, 3 or 4 specials on Netflix, and he's doing a tour right now. We're actually going to see him when he comes to Toronto in September. I think he was supposed to come already, and then the date got moved because of COVID. But yeah, he's pretty filthy, but it's right up my alley. I think he's great. But anyway, I saw it sort of popped up. It was new. I think it just dropped in the last few days. David Spade of Saturday Night Live fame has a new stand-up special on Netflix. It's called David Spade, Nothing Personal. It runs a little over an hour, which in my mind, a perfect stand-up special is an hour. Like any less than that, you sort of feel like you've been shortchanged, and it's too much more than that. It can really drag on unless you've got a really strong performer, and even the best of the best have a hard time carrying over an hour of quality material. Anyway, I watched it this afternoon, and it was pretty good. I'm not always a big fan of David Spade's television and movie work, but I did always find that he was able to pick the right lane when he was on Saturday Night Live. He was in a lot of sketches where they really played to his strengths. He did a lot of stuff on the Weekend Update that sort of really gave you a sense of where his comedy was. And I thought the special was pretty good. He hit on a lot of topics that were very timely and relevant. He talked about just getting older, and he talked about a lot of pandemic stuff. So, he's not that much older than I think he's probably around your age, Chris. And so a lot of the stuff where he talks about, like, getting older and gaining weight, having to go to the doctors and things of that nature. It's like, as a guy who's almost the same age as him, I was able to relate to a lot of the situations pretty clearly. And a lot of the COVID stuff was just sort of universally applied to everybody. So no, I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. I actually liked it more than I expected to. I figured, this will probably be about a C. And I watched it and I enjoyed it. I would give it definitely a B. It was a little better than average, but not like fantastic.
Let me tell you, going into that, you saying that, okay, I watched two movies. One was good, one was bad. And one is this movie about a Spider-Man villain, and one is a David Spade special. I would have guessed which one was good and which one was bad, the opposite. I would have thought for sure the Venom would be good and David Spade would suck, Well, go figure.
So I got one more, and that's actually the one that I liked the most.
Okay.
So the third movie I watched, I watched it on Netflix. It was, the David Spade special was on Netflix, by the way, if anyone's looking for it.
Okay.
The third one I watched was from Netflix, and it was just a random find. I was cycling through, and it says like, hey, because you've watched this, you may like this other thing.
Sure.
And it came up and it said, oh, you may like this movie called Parker. And I'm like, okay.
What's that?
I'm always dubious of a movie where the title is the name of a character, because unless it's a character that you already have a passing familiarity with, it's like, that whole thing, don't judge a book by its cover. Well, you kind of need to judge the book by its cover so that to go to page 1. And so I'm like, why would I watch this? And the poster has Jason Statham, who you might remember was in movies like The Transporter, and Jennifer Lopez. And I'm like, okay. I've seen some good movies with both of these people, and I'm a big fan of Jason Statham. He usually does a pretty good action movie. Let's see what this is about. It's from 2013. So I'm like, wow, it's 9 years old. Okay, how come I never heard of this? And I'm going through, and it's also starring Nick Nolte, and it's got Michael Chiklis, who was big from the show The Shield. Yep. And there's a few other like supporting players where you're like, oh, I know this person. Oh, it's got Bobby Cannavale in a small role. So it's like, you're watching it and it's like, wow, this is a pretty decent cast. Like, they've got some pretty reasonable actors in this. And I won't ruin it for you, but if you've ever seen a Jason Statham movie, you're going to find that Parker sort of hits all the beats. He's this thief who has a sense of honor, who, only hurts people who deserve it and only steals from people who can afford it. And he's got the heart of gold. He likes to help out old people and children and women. And of course, there's a double cross that happens. And then it's a revenge movie where he has to, you broke your word and you broke the code of thieves and I got to come and, extract justice, blah, blah, blah. And if that kind of Jason Statham movie has interested you in the past, say you've watched Transporter or you've watched, I think it's called Wrath of Man was his newer one, it's exactly the same idea. Now what I did, and I enjoyed it a lot, I thought it was really good, and again, it's got a pretty decent cast, so it wasn't just some B-list actors going through the motions, but I did find out that it's actually based on a book, and it's a series of novels. There's something like 20 novels featuring this character Parker. And the author's been writing them for I think the author recently died, but he wrote these books on this Parker character for 30 years. And something like 7 or 8 Hollywood movies over the last 20 or 30 years have been based on books featuring this Parker character, but every time it went to a Hollywood movie, they changed the character's name for whatever reason. And it's like a lot of really big movies starring a lot of very famous people were drawn from this Parker character. So I was like, oh, okay, because I thought, is this 2013? Maybe there's a sequel, or maybe there was other movies based on it. So no, it was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. It's on Netflix. It's called Parker. It stars Jason Statham and Jennifer Lopez. So yeah, that one for me is definitely my highlight of the week.
Oh, cool. I usually don't have a lot to offer during this opening segment. This week's a little bit different. I got a couple things I can talk about. So I was doing some spring cleaning, recently. Have you ever found something laying around that you just like totally forgot
all the time
owned? So
yep.
I'm doing some spring cleaning, and I go in this closet and I find this DVD that I had once bought here in town when I first moved to this city. And it was at this, this used store or something. I bought it and I never even watched it. I brought it home and I totally forgot all about it. I put it away, I guess. It's Alice, the TV show. Remember the one with Linda Lavin?
Yep.
Yeah.
The first season, or?
It was just like random 6 episodes from a couple different seasons. Kind of like a best of.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my God. So I was watching some of that. It was so good. I really like that. And so that was good. And then I watched 2 movies from the 80s. I know I watch old movies, but I watched 2 movies this week. One was awful and one was good. And the funny thing is I liked both of these movies when I was a kid, but one of them didn't hold up. So the first one was Prom Night. It was a Canadian
horror movie?
Yeah, it was a horror movie from like 1980, and it was with Jamie Lee Curtis and Leslie Nielsen. This is before he did this right before Airplane came out. Before Airplane kind of transformed him from that serious actor that he was into a comedic actor.
Right.
I had some really fond memories of this movie. I mentioned it on the episode that we did about movies we saw far too young, because it scared the Jesus out of me. I mean, I was only 11 when I saw it, but man, did it suck. Oh my God. And it spawned like 4 sequels and a reboot and everything else. It was
I always remember the sequel was Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night 2.
Yes. And it was just and then Prom Night 3, Last Kiss, directed by my buddy Ron Oliver, the guy that loves me so much. Mm-hmm. Oh man, this movie is terrible. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, this movie is it's just awful. And I had good memories of it, and I'm watching it. What the hell is this? And then the other one was called The Principal. It was from 1987 with Jim Belushi.
Okay.
Still in the shadow of his older brother John back at the time, even though John had already passed away. And he had just done a movie called About Last Night in 1986. And he was like a supporting role, but it was like big for him and it kind of put him on the map and stuff like that. This movie was really good. I was surprised how much I liked it. Even 35 years later, he's like this teacher, and like he just freaks out one night. He sees his ex in a bar, and he goes out and like takes a baseball bat to her boyfriend's car. So instead of firing him, they're like, no, we're going to make you a principal in this inner city school. And so he has to go in and like try and clean up this school. It was actually quite good. I was surprised. So I get to see a couple little things there. Not too bad. So, and I also got this for you.
Here's your dad joke of the week.
Don't want to forget my dad joke this week. Okay. So, Derek, as you know, I'm a little overweight.
No.
No. My doctor says I swallow
just
a lot
more
of
you to
aggression.
Love, buddy.
Yeah. My doctor says I swallow a lot of aggression, along with a lot of pizza.
I was just about to say, that's a funny word for pizza.
Yeah. Well, that's a quote from Stripes. I like to quote old movies from time to time, as I'm sure you know. So dad joke about my weight. All right. Derek, why don't I go on a diet?
Oh, there are so many answers, but none of them funny. So I don't know, Chris, why not?
I've just got too much on my plate right now. Too busy to lose the weight.
Mm-hmm. Why don't you lose that joke?
Yeah, good idea. Is there any chance you might have a documentary for us this week?
Derek's Dogs! Party time! Excellent!
Colonel Sanders.
Slow down there, Chris.
Was he finger licking good?
Oh, my.
I can think of 11 reasons not to like that.
2 of which are salt and pepper.
Oh, I heard about this.
Oh my God, I don't know if we can be friends anymore.
But I appreciate the effort.
Back the truck up, hold it.
More than just white dudes.
2 of my favorite things, Star Wars and beer. Okay, we're doing a pop culture fantasy draft again this week. It's on the year 1980. Derek, you proposed that we do this one. Now, usually we start things off with a coin flip to decide, who's going to go first in the draft. And Derek, you mentioned something very important last week. You were talking about how crucial it is to have the first pick this week. Mm-hmm. Now, for a bit of context, we've had 5 pop culture fantasy drafts so far. So we've done 1981, 82, 84, 85, and 89. And then we send our lists off to our panel of esteemed judges. I'm currently in the lead 4-1.
Yeah, I'm not doing well.
A total vote count of 32-12 is in my favor. Now, keep in mind, I'm a former fantasy baseball guy, so drafts are kind of a specialty of mine, right? So I want to do something a little different this time out. So instead of having our coin flip, with the first pick being is so important, as you mentioned, whoever takes Empire Strikes Back, they got a big leg up. So I'd like to waive the coin flip, and I'd like to hand over the first overall pick to you.
Okay, it's funny you mentioned that because, and I appreciate it, and I'm going to accept it. Don't let me talk you out of this one.
No, I'd like to take on the challenge of trying to overcome that hurdle.
So, when we first came up with the idea of this movie draft, we had to figure out a way to set the rules to level the playing field, and we came up with a pretty interesting format that seems to be working pretty well. But like anything else, once you see it in practice, you start to see some of the holes and you start to think about ways to improve it. And after a couple of drafts, and we've already had a few sort of side conversations, we've thought of a couple of things. Well, maybe we could have done this differently. Maybe we could have done that differently. But once you're in the middle of it, we already committed to doing 10 of these to cover each year of the 1980s. You can't really change the methodology halfway through, because then you can't really hold up the stats at the end and say, well, Chris won 7 out of 10 years, but then now it's an asterisk because it's like, well, we changed the rules after 5 of them. So you're stuck with your format, and you learn to just work within it. And that's hey, I'm not dumping on it. It is what it is, and I'm learning. But one of the big things that I thought sort of after we had done a couple of these drafts, especially when we started to realize that in some years there is just that silver bullet pick in the first, if you don't get it, you're coming from behind, is I thought afterwards we should have done it that there's 10 drafts. We should have randomly determined each guy gets 5 number 1 picks to try and level it a bit. So, I mean, it is what it is. We're not going to change it now. So I appreciate, because I think you've had 4. No, I think you had 3 number 1s and I've had 2 number 1s so
it's
far.
been close, and this evens it out.
Yeah,
now. 3-3.
And I had the very first one, and again, not really understanding the best way to draft a team. I really flubbed that number 1 pick in the first year, and it cost me. And I've since learned, but yeah. So no, I appreciate you.
Movies really do kind of hold the most sway. I think if I was voting on lists, that'd be the first thing I'd be looking at.
And that's one of my things as well, is one of the sort of what would you do to change it is I think we would need to find a way to sort of implement some balance between the categories, so that even if one guy clearly runs away with one of the 3 categories, say for example the movie category, it doesn't just automatically lock in a victory. But again, we're going to stick with the format we've got.
That's the way it is.
But if we choose to do this for maybe the 90s or the 70s or any other decade, or even just some random years here and there, we may have to finesse it a little bit. But we're in the 80s. We're going to stick with the 80s. We're going to stick with the rules that brought us. So if you're giving me the number 1 pick, then there's no question about it. I am taking a TV. No, I'm just kidding. I am, of course, taking The Empire Strikes Back as my number 1 movie pick. There's no doubt.
All right. So first movie's off the board. That's The Empire Strikes Back. It was the number 1 movie at the box office that year, $209 million. It was like, that is the big movie, and the thing is too, like, I remember when that movie came out. I mean, Star Wars was everything to me when I was a kid. And the thought that they were going to make a sequel to it. And this is before all of this episode 4, episode 5 garbage that, none of that. When they first were announcing that they were going to work on a sequel, the working title was Star Wars 2.
Star Wars 2.
That's it, and then they came up with what's going to be called The Empire Strikes Back, and there was no New Hope. It was Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. That's the way it was. But Empire Strikes Back, I remember being in the movie theater watching it and just being blown away. I remember being in the movie theater when the scene with the speeder, like the snow speeders coming over like the mountains and stuff like that, when they were looking for Luke and Han. You feel like you're in one of the speeder, but like it was just like, oh my God, it was just, that movie is amazing. And if you think about it, it is the greatest science fiction film ever made. Hands down.
It's definitely the top 3, no question. It's one of my absolute all-time favorite movies. All of the Star Wars movies, even the prequels and the new sequels and the Han Solo movie and all those ones, they were running them all over Easter weekend on one of the channels. And I think Empire was on 3 times, and I think I watched it 2.5 times. Like, it was just on TV,
So
and
good, isn't it?
one of the days my wife and I just sat down. She goes, "What do you want to watch?" I go, "Well, Empire's about to start. Why don't we just watch the beginning part until they leave Hoth?" She's like, "Okay." And the next thing you know, we're at the end of the movie, and I'm like, "Well, I'm glad we only watched the first part." And then it was on like 8 hours later. It was on again, and I was, it was later at night, and I was flicking around, going, "Oh, what's going on? Hey, look, Empire's coming on again." Well, this time I will just watch. No, and I watched the whole thing again. Like, it's just so good. It's so rewatchable for so many reasons.
The whole thing from beginning to end, like I say, it's just science fiction, like on steroids. Like, there's a whole planet that has snow. There's this little creature, Yoda is going on. There's the Wampa. There's a city in the clouds, for crying out loud.
Yeah,
There's just so much. It's just, it's so good. So that's a good one. And that's the way you got to go. You got to go with that one. That's the best movie of the year, the biggest movie of the year. That one's right off the board. I think, okay, for my pick, I'm going to have to try.
I think I know where you're going to go with your pick. Because I was sort of, as with always with the drafts, you try and anticipate. Mm-hmm. Well, if I get first pick, I'm going to do this, and then this is how you're probably going to respond. And if you have first pick, then this is how I'm going to respond. So I have a note here. I'm like, where I was like, Empire, Derek, number 1, Chris, blah, 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 number 1. So I have a pretty strong inclination. I think what you're going to do.
I'm going to try something completely off the board, because I'm going to go to a different category. And I'm going to go to TV. I'm going to take a TV show, but it's a TV show I've never even watched an episode of. That's how bad it is. But to me, it's kind of iconic, and it just really screams of the 80s. And it's obviously Magnum PI. So I'm going to go with Magnum PI.
Yeah. No, that's a strong pick. And you and I talked about this earlier. This is one of those years where there's not a lot of memorable shows from the 19. There was a lot of shows, but not a lot of memorable shows. It's a pretty short bench. So yeah, getting a first pick in there is that's a good one. Honestly, that's not what I thought you were going to do, though. I thought you were going to go to music, which is where I'm going.
Oh, okay.
And I am taking, for my number 1 pick in music, AC/DC, You Shook Me All Night Long.
Oh, that was my number 1 pick. That was my number 1 pick for music. Yep.
No, I figured if you didn't take if you had taken Empire, that was going to be my number 1, and then you didn't take it as your pick, so I got to lock that in right away. Boom.
And the thing is, like, I mean, I could still come back and take Back in Black,
of course.
But still, like, that's the song. That's the song off there. It's just so iconic. It's lasted so long, and I don't know. That's a good pick, and and
I missed out on Eye the Tiger when we did our draft the other year. I had the chance to pick it, and I think I went for a Prince song instead. And I knew as soon as I made the pick, I'm like, I made the wrong choice. And then you grabbed it, and I'm like, I think that was my sliding doors moment. If I had that, I think I would have won the draft. But anyway, neither here nor there. You won it. What are you doing with your second pick?
My second pick, I'm just taking a look at the box office from that year, and my pick is in the top 10, but I'm going to go down a little bit, I think. And it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And when I think of 1980, I think of 2 movies sort of jump out, other than Empire Strikes Back. It's in its own category. That's the Wayne Gretzky of movies. But when I think of 1980, there's 2 movies that always come to mind, and I'm going to go with one of them, and that is The Blues Brothers.
Nice.
I'm going to go with The Blues Brothers for my first movie.
Yep. No, I have it on my list. I knew you would probably take it. I didn't even put it in my top 3 because I'm like, Chris will have it off the board before then. So, no,
got to do that. So
I figured you were going to do that.
It finished 9th at the box office. It made $57 million that year. Didn't open in wide release when it first came out back in June of that year, but it's based on these SNL characters. It's got Belushi and Aykroyd, who I love both those guys so much. And it's funny, I was involved in a bit of a Twitter conversation this week, and the guy was basically saying, what was it about the Blues Brothers was so good? It's not funny. I don't get it. And, like I was trying to explain that, like, the Blues Brothers evolved. Like, on the old SNL, they used to do this thing called the Killer Bees. You remember they had those like costumes and those bouncy things on their hair. And then like they didn't really like doing it. Like Belushi and Aykroyd, like, we don't like doing this. But, hey, how about if we had the Killer Bees come out and sing a song? I'm like, okay, well, we'll explore that. And that allowed Belushi the chance to come out and sing. Right. So they came out and they did the Killer Bees, and he sang King Bee. And Aykroyd played the harmonica. And it was a hit. Audiences liked it. So they're like, we want more of that. So they said, well, let's put together an act in some way. And that's where they came up with the Blues Brothers. And then they did Soul Man on there. And they just were able to go out and just get this great backing band. And I mean, the movie is like, you got to think, like, it's John Landis right after Animal House, and before he started making things like Trading Places and stuff like that. He was on his game. And so the movie The Blues Brothers is more about the music than it is about
Oh,
the
for sure.
comedy. Like you think of it as being a comedy, but if you look, it's not all that funny, really. I mean, there's a couple funny scenes in it, but it's more about the music, and it's just kind of got so many different people in it. And the other thing too is that a lot of the acts that they had in there, James Brown and Aretha Franklin and Ray Charles, these people were like they were like forgotten people.
Yeah, I was going to say it revitalized the blues
yeah.
music, and a lot of artists had their comeback. And we talked about that when we reviewed the Blues Brothers on our podcast many episodes back.
So yeah, I'm happy with going with the Blues Brothers there. So yeah, okay. Over to you for your
That's a good
second pick. What do you want?
All right,
to do, bud?
I'm going back to music.
Oh, you! I got to give you credit, man. I got to give you credit because this is consistent every week. You kill me every time we do this. You kill me in music.
Well, there's a
You
lot of
know
good
your music
music out
better,
there.
too.
This 1980 has a lot of good ones, but I got 2 or 3 sort of like these are the iconic songs. I'm like I'm just gonna try and lock it in. So I am going with. So they're about to announce the inductees for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame here in the next couple of weeks, and this is an artist that had been shut out for a long, long time, and I really hope she's getting in this year, and it looks like she's going to. I'm going with Pat Benatar. Hit me with your best shot.
Oh man, jeez. That's an iconic song, isn't it? Oh, man. Sloth has the night off, so I'm making notes. So I'm going to take this. So hit me with your best shot, your song. Okay. All right. You shook me with the first one. I really miss having Sloth around. He does all this. You shook me. Okay, so you got 2 songs. You're going to kill me in that. Again, it's back to me. What the heck am I going to do? You know, I think I can get away with that one. Hanging on. So, 1980. You know, the comedies were so much better back then. They were just so much better back then. I think I got to go with one of my favorite comedies of all time, and that's Airplane. Got to do it. So it's just like
It was between Pat Benatar and Airplane. I'm like, oh, Chris, he's not going to grab that this quickly. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, I am. Oh man, that movie is so funny. Like, now, as opposed to the Blues Brothers, which was less about comedy and more about music.
Yeah.
Airplane, all comedy. It is probably the funniest movie ever made. I would put it up against anything. I think maybe Blazing Saddles.
I would put it in a top 5. No questions. It makes a top 5 all-time funniest movies ever. No argument from me.
God, everything about it is so funny. And the thing is, too, I remember after it came out, it was so successful that they came out with a TV series in 1981 called Police Squad. And I was talking about that on Twitter, too, this last week.
Yeah, we've talked about that before on this show.
6 episodes, and it was gone. Leslie Nielsen playing this cop, and Frank Drebin. 6 episodes got canceled. But it was like...
And then 3 movies.
Yep. They came back by making movies and made The Naked Gun out of it. It was so funny, if anyone's ever seen it. Like, the opening credits would be 2 funny things every week that they did. Opening credits would come up and it would say, this week's guest star, George Sanford Brown. And he would like roll out of a car. He was dead. Like whoever the guest star always died in the opening credits. And then it would give the title and they'd always misread it. It'd be like Ring of Fear. But like the title on the screen would be like something different, you know, like so, it's always so funny. So, you know, Airplane is the way to go. Funniest movie ever made. So I'm going to go with that one. All right. Got 2 movies there. My songs again, I'm going to get crushed on. Okay, over to you, my friend.
I need a TV show because there's not many, and I was worried you were going to dip into 2 right away. Yeah. So, again, I think Magnum was the obvious choice, and then I think everything after that is like a huge step backwards. I'm going to go with Tom Hanks before he was Tom Hanks, Bosom Buddies.
Absolutely, that would have been my second one.
Yeah,
I would have went with that one next. And the thing was, like, the show didn't last long, last like 3 seasons. And he obviously went on to become, you know, one of the greatest actors of his generation, biggest superstar, you know, everywhere. And Peter Scolari just never did.
I mean, he was on Newhart, and he worked consistently.
Oh yeah.
And he just died recently. Didn't he die last year or the year before? So
2 years ago.
But I seem to recall the women in that show went on to do a lot of TV work as well.
Thelma Hopkins did a little bit. I mean, Wendy Jo Sperber was very recognizable. I mean, she was the sister in...
I was going to say the sister in Back to the Future, right? Yeah.
And she was in Moving Violations, if you remember.
I do, yes.
God, she was funny in that. And of course, Donna Dixon, she went on to marry Dan Aykroyd. They're still married to the day.
Wow, good for her.
She was in Spies Like Us with him.
Right.
Yeah, so a couple of them did a couple more things. But Scolari I liked in a show called Girls. He did with on HBO. He was like the dad. He was Lena Dunham's dad. And
Lena Dunham.
The one scene he did, he's like full frontal nudity. Like, oh my God. So it was just, he was a good actor, and he really did some interesting things with that character on that show. So yeah, they were both really good. That's a good pick. I mean, I think even though it only lasted 3 seasons, I think the judges will look at it like, or remember it fondly, because it was very seminal. I'm hoping.
It
was seminal.
That's what I'm hoping as well.
That's a good one. Oh man, I guess I better get a TV show as well, because there's not many of them. One that I always liked, I watched this one when it ran, and it was with Ted Knight, and it was Too Close for Comfort. So I'm going to go with that one. That was pretty good. He was this like cartoonist, and he had the Cosmic Cow was this cartoon that he would draw.
Right. And it was a little. I mean, 1980. I was only 6 years old, so it was a little before my time. But
but it ran for like 6 seasons.
And I remember seeing some of the later the show in the later years, and not really caring for it. Again, sitcoms are often of their time and speak to issues in the moment. So like, if I'm a 10-year-old kid, I'm not understanding the context of a lot of the issues that are being discussed in these shows, but I mean, there was enough slapstick kind of like Jim J. Bullock. I remember being great as a sporty character in that. Yep. And he always appealed to me as a young person, because he was always doing the goofy things, right? So, but I'm wondering if that's the kind of show where if they had it on one of these retro channels and you go back, if it would hold up. Like, might be worth watching, might be worth at least looking into.
There's a lot of shows that I wish that they would stream that they don't stream, let me tell you. So that would be one of them. I would watch that. Okay, so what do we got here? So I got Too Close for Comfort, so it's over to you. I've got 4, 1, 2, 3. You got 4, so it's over to your 5th pick.
Yep, I'm going to TV again.
Okay,
because there's not many, and 3 are off the board already. Okay, I'm going with the staple 1980s show, Solid Gold. Remember the Solid Gold Countdown?
Oh yeah, wasn't Danny Terrio on that?
This was like and Marilyn McCoo.
Oh yes, that's right, she was.
Yeah, this was. I remember when I was younger, like we didn't have MTV, we didn't have much music.
Gold.
My parents were too cheap to get cable, so I loved music videos, and in the absence of music videos, this was sort of the next sort of poor substitute, because it aired on network TV. And I can remember watching the Solid Gold Countdown.
It was on Saturday nights, wasn't it?
And I remember on New Year's Eve, they used to always do the top 100 countdown of the year on the Solid Gold special. And that my parents used to always let us stay up because they knew how much we liked music. And so, that I was going to save it for personal pick, but I'm like, I don't think I can come up with 3 shows and then have that as a personal pick. So I'm like, I got to take it as my number 2. 80s TV show.
I think Dionne Warwick actually was on the first season too, if I remember correctly.
Would not surprise me.
That's a good pick. So now we've got, okay, what am I going to do here? I've got a lot of comedies, but it was a comedy year, and one of the favorite movies of both you and me. We not only have done this movie on this podcast one time, before you and I ever podcasted together, I remember we got together one time and we did a full feature-length commentary on this film. It is one of my favorite comedies of all time. I think the judges, it will resound with them, and that's Caddyshack. So I'm going with Caddyshack.
I kind of thought that might slip through since you already had 2 comedies, but
couldn't let it go.
Yeah,
like it too
but
much.
Now you've got 3 movie picks, so that sort of leaves me to mull over that.
Cruise, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to go back to TV since I don't think there are many good ones left.
No, there is not.
I'm not even calling this a good one, but I am calling this a 1980s staple that will resonate with some of the judges. And that is the show That's Incredible.
Yep, that's the next one on my list, man. That's Incredible. Yep. Oh my God.
It's I remember. So this, you got to remember, right? For our younger listeners, there wasn't internet, there wasn't YouTube. They didn't even have like America's Funniest Videos, and like, so this was a precursor to all of that. People would come, either send in tapes, or in most cases they would send the show would send like a camera crew to their house because nobody had video recorders, and they would record these bizarre things like beekeepers with the bee of beards or the beard of bees. Or I remember one where they would like a contortionist would put himself in a glass case and they would put him underwater in a pool with like weights on top of it for an hour while he lowered his breathing rate. And like, it was just these bizarre, weird things. Or it was like stunt people doing like, this motorcycle will jump over this thing. And it's just like this craziness stuff that would like everything I'm describing now. You're like, yeah, I can see that on YouTube. This was way before that. And if they featured you on it, you got a That's Incredible jacket as a consolation prize for being featured on their show. And it was like this silver windbreaker style jacket. And I remember, again, as a really little kid in the early 80s going, That's Incredible jacket would be amazing. And one of my buddies, once his mom bought him this blue windbreaker and it had a silver lining on the inside. And he used to wear it inside out and tell everyone it was a That's Incredible jacket. And we were young and stupid and we believed him. So Gotta go with it. That's incredible.
No,
Terrible show, but it definitely has a place in 1980 pop culture, and I'm hoping it'll resonate with some of the judges, especially because most of the TV shows from 1980 sucked.
I was more of a fan of the other show, which was very similar to, was kind of a reality show at the time called Real People.
Real People?
Yeah.
Yep.
With Skip Stevenson and Sarah Purcell and I think Byron Allen was on. Oh, yeah. That one. And John Barber, he was Canadian. But yeah, they were both very similar. There was no reality shows. That's what they did. But I mean, that's incredible. Wasn't Fran Tarkenton? He was like a football player. They get him and they put him on.
Anthony Crosby, Fran Tarkenton, and who was the third? John
Davidson. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh man, that was good.
Don't ask me why I remember that. Again, it's the weirdest things that your pop culture brain remembers. I can't tell you what I had for lunch last week, but I could tell you the three hosts of That's Incredible from 1980.
Of course. It's funny. I'm looking at our list here, and two of our titles, one of your TV shows and one of my movies, have an exclamation mark in it. Airplane.
Oh, good point.
That's incredible.
That's incredible. Yep.
So, okay. I'm going to drop down and I got to get a song.
Yeah,
and I figured the best way for me to do this is probably I'm a big movie guy, so I think maybe I'm going to double dip a little bit here. I'm going to go with, not only is it her signature song, I also believe she might be going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame very soon, even though it's not rock and roll. But I'm going to go with Dolly Parton with the song 9 to 5. It was a hit movie from 1980, so it's a double whammy for this draft. And when I think of 1980, I mean, that song, it's like, I think it's her best song. It's like catchy. You can sing along to it.
It was both a pop song and a country song. Like it crossed over onto both charts. So it really, she had already been very poppy in her style of country music, but yeah. And in between this and the movie, like if she wasn't already a star, this like rocketed her to superstardom.
Absolutely. And the fact that, then she was in the movie and like she'd never acted before and she was great, charismatic in the movie. Like she just steals the movie. And it's funny you say like she's a crossover. It's like she was the Taylor Swift of 1980. Of her day. So yeah, I'm going to go with 9 to 5. I think it'll resonate with the judges and recall the movie as well for them. So I think it's, again, I'm not as strong on music as you are, and a lot of the music that I remember is from movies, so that's where I think I need to go here. So
no, that's fair.
Yep.
And I have that on my short list, my shorter of the short list. But I'm glad that you stayed away from my number 3 pick. So I'm going to go to music, and I'm going to grab my 1, 2, and 3. So my number 3 pick, one of my all-time favorite bands, one of your all-time favorite bands, Queen. I'm taking Another One Bites the Dust.
Oh man, that was my next pick. Good
and that's wrapped up the music category and the TV category for me. So I only have the 2 movies to go. So we're going to be able to stay out of each other's way now.
Mm-hmm. And that was from their album The Game that came out in 80. The thing was, they did so many different genres of music, and they were killer at all of them. Mm-hmm. Oh man, that album was a huge success too. That song spent 15 weeks in the Billboard Top 10. It was the longest running top 10 song of the year. Like, just, that's a good one. And it was everywhere at the time. I remember, that's a good one. Oh man, now you got that sewn up. So really, we've got everything sewn up, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you need one TV show and 2 music, which you can take in any order.
I can take in any order. Yeah. I guess I do need a TV show. I'm really thinking about doing something kind of different. Saturday morning TV was still a thing. By 1980. And I was 10 years old, so I was still...
Oh, I know exactly where you're going with this. Yeah, go.
One of my favorite TV shows of all time.
I sure do.
One of my favorite human beings of all time. They gave him a Saturday morning show, and I used to watch it. I loved it all the time. And it wasn't just... And it was Fonz and the Happy Days Gang. Right. Was the name of it. I loved it. And it wasn't just Fonzie and like Ralph Malph and Richie, and then they had this pet dog and everything, and so they eventually had another one where it was like they were in outer space, but I got to go with Fonz and the Happy Days Gang.
Yeah, I honestly thought you were going to say that for your personal pick, because I certainly wasn't going to pick it. I barely remember the cartoon, and I was like, no, I'm just going to stay off your lawn on that one. That's all you.
Yeah,
but
that one.
But honestly, the TV show bench is pretty ugly, so you didn't really have a lot of other things to pull. So
there was Thundar the Barbarian as well, but I don't know if a lot of people remember it.
I don't know if that really has the legacy of some of the others. I think I had picked the Smurfs on one of the previous podcasts, and it's like even that I think was a bit of a stretch. I think a lot of the judges were sort of like, "What the hell's with this?"
Yeah, the Smurfs was pretty iconic and endured for a long time. That was a good pick because I remember you did it.
All right, So I started the draft with Empire Strikes Back. I got to end the draft with 2 more movie picks, and I've got 2 really critically successful picks here. I'm just debating the order in which to do them because I might switch out one of them. So I'm going to go with a movie that is not one of my personal favorites, but I know many people hold in high regard, including you, because we have reviewed it. I'm going to go with Raging Bull.
Oh yeah, you didn't like the movie, but your pick is obviously not because you like it. You're picking it because you think it'll play with the judges, and it was a huge movie. I mean, it wasn't a really successful movie when it came out. That's for sure. I mean, it didn't finish in the top 10. I don't know. It finished 20th overall at the box office with 23 million. So I mean, it was not a huge success, but critically, critics loved it, and very, very rightly so. I mean, it is a film of films. Like, I think it's just phenomenal. We said lots about it. You can go back and listen to the episode where we reviewed it. Again, you didn't like it, but I can see why you picked it. It's a good one.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I need another song here. I think I'm going to go with when I was young, back when I was in like grade 8. I used to love this guy. So for years, he was the front man for Black Sabbath. But then Ozzy Osbourne went solo, and in September of 1980, he released Blizzard of Oz. And one of my favorite songs of all time is on there, and it's Crazy Train. So I'm going to go with Crazy Train for my second song.
Nice. I'll be honest, I overlooked that one in the drafting. Didn't see that one on the lists. All right. That's a good pick. I might have had to take that if I had known it. Nice little steal there. Okay, sorry, I'm just marking down your pick here. So, it's Crazy Train?
That's right, yeah.
Crazy Train. That's Chris' 8th overall pick. All right. So, I'm debating between 2 movies here. Both of them are horror movies. I'm not a big fan of the horror genre.
No, you don't like horror movies.
But I want to not play to the judges, but I want to round out my picks. And I'm really not sure which of these ones to take. I think it's almost like I feel like I'm leaving money on the table if I don't go with the one that my gut is telling me and go with the one I think the judges are going to like more. Oh boy. Well, I think I'm gonna make an audible. I'm gonna make a change here at the last second, and I'm gonna go with the very first Friday the 13th.
Nice. It had like umpteen million sequels. I think they've even rebooted it lately and stuff like that.
Well, and it's
see
a
where you're going.
franchise that people know, right? So it's like, well, I've got Empire, which is obviously the biggest franchise people know. And then Raging Bull is more of that like critical success. This is Scorsese's best film, and De Niro won an Oscar. So it's like you're sort of appealing to both sides. I'm like, by taking a horror movie, especially one that's as recognizable as Friday the 13th, that should sort of, any judge that isn't already won by my other 2 picks, that should hopefully bring them around a little bit. So I think there was 2 or 3 picks here, and I think they were all reasonable. But I'm now that I'm seeing it in writing, I'm confident with that. So I'm good. I'm going to stick with that. That's my.
You were obviously between that and The Shining. I would have leaned toward The Shining personally, but Friday the 13th is a good pick, and I think it might resonate. It was a little bit more popular at the box office than The Shining was, but it's pretty good. Okay, so I got to get a song in here. So my last song. Ooh, I know. What am I going to do? Well, I think I said a hip hop, a hippie to the hip hop, and you don't stop. I'm going with Rapper's Delight, baby.
Nice.
Sugar Hill Gang came out with their album in 1980, the Sugar Hill Gang, and Rapper's Delight was one of the first hip hop songs of all time. So it was, it was trend setting and everything else. And I'm going with Rapper's Delight. I think it's a good pick. So
nice. That's a good pick. All right. So we need personal picks.
On to your personal pick. It could be a movie. It could be a TV show. None of them left, really. It could be a song, but it's something that, again, our personal pick is just that. It's not just rounding out the list as a 10th, but it's usually something that is personal, like from that year that you really liked or, something. So what do you want to go with? All
right. So, and this is actually my explanation for why I didn't just pick The Shining as my last pick is I'm taking it for my personal pick. And this is why. So I've never seen Friday the 13th. I've never seen any of them. It's because horror is not my thing. I generally stay away from it. They just don't appeal to me. I've only seen a few horror movies, which is why I thought I'm just going to add it to the list because The Shining is one of those horror movies that I actually have seen and does I knew it would sort of classify as a personal pick. So The Shining is one of these movies that I actually saw way too young, and I probably in retrospect should have put it on that list. So as I mentioned numerous times, I spent my summers with my cousins, and they would rent videos. And this is one of those ones where they liked horror movies. And 9 times out of 10, when they would rent a horror movie, I would just go to bed because I'm like, if I see this and I'm little, it's going to freak me out. I'm going to get nightmares. But I had seen some stuff with Jack Nicholson, and even at a young age, I thought, oh well, this guy's pretty good. Let's watch this. And the Popeye movie came out, I think, in 1980 as well. And again, as a little kid, I enjoyed it. And so they're like, oh, well, the woman who plays Olive Oyl is in this movie, right? Because I think it's Shelley Duvall's in both of those.
Yes.
So I'm like, okay, I'll try it. So my cousins convinced me to watch this. And of course, scared the hell out of me. But it not only, so I mean, I was terrified of as a little kid, but it was one of those movies that didn't go away, but not just because I was scared of it. Like my brain was, there's so much going on in this movie. And I can remember like, in the years to follow, when it became more readily available on video and they showed it on cable, I can remember watching it again and starting to like really start to enjoy it and start to pick up on some of those details. And the whole ending of the movie, this idea of, well, it's, is this spirit from the past or what have you? And you see the picture of Jack Nicholson's character in the old photo. And it was just like something about this movie just had me all in. And at first it was for all the wrong reasons because I was terrified of the movie. And then years later, it was like I could start to appreciate the artistry of it. I could start to appreciate the nuances of the story. And of course, the performance from Jack Nicholson. And so it went from this movie that in 1980 terrified me to this movie many years later that it's like, I consider it a critical, as so many critics did, I consider it a critical success, and I can find so much. And every time I do watch it, I pick up new details. So that was my personal pick, is The Shining.
It's a good one. I'm down to 3 for my personal pick. I'm not sure which I think I got to go. I think I got to do this the right way. So there's 3 movies that are very personal to me from 1980. So one is, I think I had mentioned to you before, I told a story about when I was a kid, I wanted to go see this movie. And so my buddy and I, my buddy who ended up going on to play in the NHL of all things, we went to see this movie, Flash Gordon, and we just loved it and loved it so much. And it was like, it had the Queen song at the beginning, and it was like this cartoony, campy thing. It was meant to be a bit more of a challenge for Star Wars, because when Star Wars had come out, but it just ended up being this like campy, kitschy thing. And we liked it so much and enjoyed it so much that we went out and we would shovel people's driveways, because we're from Canada and it's cold. We would shove people's driveways to make money to go back and see it again and again and again. So that was one, but I'm not going to go with that one. The other one is a small movie. In 1980, I moved towns, and I was, came to a new town, and I was bullied by kids. So I really related to this movie that came out with Chris Makepeace called My Bodyguard. It was so good. And he was also in Meatballs. So, I really like that. And My Bodyguard is really, really good movie. But the movie I'm going to go with is a movie that came out on the Movie Network, and I watched it over and over and over and over so many times that I knew the dialogue backward and forward. And it was funny too. It was a funny movie. And it is Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder in Stir Crazy.
Oh, so that's a good pick.
I really like that movie a lot. I got to find it and see if it's on the streaming services somewhere. I'm inspired to almost want to go back and watch it this week, just talking about it. But to see how much of the dialogue I remember, Jo Beth Williams was in it, and that movie was good. So, I watched it so many times. I think the 2 movies I watched the most on the Movie Network were Stir Crazy and For Your Eyes Only. At the time. So I got to go.
Which was a personal pick for you for one of our other years.
Yeah,
so.
And probably just because I'd watch it so many times, so. All right, so do we want to do a quick review?
Yeah, give us a recap here.
Okay, so for my list first, my movies are The Blues Brothers, Airplane, and Caddyshack. Your movies, you went with The Empire Strikes Back, Raging Bull, and Friday the 13th. TV shows, on my list, I had Magnum P.I., Too Close for Comfort, and Fonz and the Happy Days Gang. And your TV shows were Bosom Buddies, Solid Gold, and That's Incredible. And our songs, I went with 9 to 5 by Dolly Parton, Crazy Train by Ozzy, and Rapper's Delight, the Sugar Hill Gang. And your songs were You Shook Me All Night Long by AC/DC, Hit Me With Your Best Shot, Pat Benatar, and another one, Bites the Dust by Queen. My personal pick is Stir Crazy, and your personal pick was The Shining. So those are our lists. So now we've got to send these off to our esteemed panel of judges. So we'll have them render a verdict, and then they'll get back to us. And next week, we'll announce the winner. We'll see who's the winner of the 1980 Pop Culture Fantasy Draft. And the winner, of course, gets to take home the Funko Fonzie Trophy. So we'll see who's going to get that one. But on that note, what do you say we wrap things up and we have ourselves some
Fun with Caveman.
All right, so I got something I'd like to do this week. It's something we've done in the past before. Let me just take a look here and see. I think I want to go with some movie quotes this week. And what better way to do movie quotes than to do a little game that we like to call Rock the Quote. Music starts playing. As soon as I start singing, I just started laughing. It's so
You know what
bad.
that song
It's
needs?
terrible.
It needs you saying "rock the quote" about 8 or 9 more times.
Yeah, and it needs more
I
cowbell.
would just make it perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, well, everything gets better with more cowbell.
More cowbell and me saying "rock the quote" 8 more times. Okay, so we're gonna rock the quote.
We're gonna try. But
Yeah, you always do good.
Not my strongest year. I was pretty young, so
Yeah, but you'll do good. So here's the thing. I'm gonna make it easy on you. So I'm gonna give you a quote. You just got to tell me the movie it comes from, and then the common thread is they're all from 1980. All right, so keep it nice and easy. So in all 1980 movies, oh man, I'm going to go so easy on you, you're going to probably get them all. Okay, is there no one on this planet to even challenge me?
wow. Flash Gordon.
Man, I went with the easiest one first, thinking you'd rock it. It was Superman 2. General's like, is there no one on this planet to even challenge me?
Yeah, I almost picked that as my personal pick, but
Man. Okay, it's 106 miles to Chicago. We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses.
yeah, that's the Blues Brothers.
Remember which one of them said it?
Not off the top of my head.
It was Elwood. Elwood said that. Okay, looks like I picked the wrong week to stop sniffing glue.
That sounds like Airplane.
Yes, McCroskey said that. Okay, I'm not an animal. I am a human being.
That this is a movie I thought you were going to pick and you didn't. The Elephant Man.
Good movie, man. That's a good movie. All right, here's an easy one for you, Derek, because I know you like this movie. Right Turn, Clyde.
Oh, that was. It was either Every Which Way You Can or Every Which Way But Loose. Every Which Way But Loose. Damn it.
No, it's Any Which Way You Can, the sequel to Every Which Way But Loose.
I couldn't remember which order they came out with.
Philo Beddoe said that one, if you remember it correctly. Okay, here's one for you. It's a long one, so bear with me, okay?
Copy.
That's Grossberger, the biggest mass murderer in the history of the Southwest. My dear, he killed his entire family and all of his relatives in one weekend, and then he killed some more people that reminded him of his family.
Isn't that from Stir Crazy?
Yes, it was. Rory said that. George Stanford Brown. Okay. I will gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today.
Well, it's got to be from Popeye.
Paul Dooley as Wimpy said that. Okay. Violet Newstead, please hold. Violet Newstead, please hold. Violet Newstead, please hold. This is Violet Newstead.
Do we have any movies that are quoted more than once in this trivia?
No.
Okay, so it's not Airplane. Wow. I have no idea. I don't know.
Lily Tomlin said that in 9 to 5.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Okay. He's escaping, idiot. Dispatch War Rocket Ajax to bring back his body.
Wow. I don't know. That doesn't sound familiar at all.
Oh, Colin said that in Flash Gordon. It was also used in the Queen song. And right in the middle of the Queen song that comes in.
Okay.
That's why
Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen the movie Flash Gordon. I'm marginally familiar with the music.
Okay, this last one, I have one last one for you. Okay?
Oh boy, I have not done well.
Oh, that's all right.
Make it easy. May the force be with you, or something super obvious.
I'm going to sing it for you, okay?
Oh boy.
Mexican Americans love education, so they go to night school and take Spanish, work real hard, and get a B.
Yeah, that's Cheech and Chong's next movie.
Another favorite line. I love that movie. So when I was talking at the top, two movies that remind me of 1980 when I think of it, Blues Brothers and Cheech and Chong's next movie always come to mind.
Nice.
The other line I like in that movie is when he's like, "Oh man, I'm going to be late for work again. That's the 5th time this week and it's only Tuesday, man." I've always liked that line. I don't know. Jesus. Oh. All right. So there you go. You didn't do very good this week. I thought you'd do well. I teed up.
Well, I didn't know a lot of the movies, or I hadn't seen like 9 to 5. I think I haven't seen that movie in 25 years. Like I don't remember.
Yeah, but Superman too. Is there no one on this planet?
Yeah, that one I sort of missed. Yeah, but again, I haven't seen the movie in a long time. But that's on me. So
well, like we said, we're going to send our fantasy draft lists off to our esteemed panel of judges, and they're going to vote. Next time we're going to announce the winner, so we can look forward to that. But next time we're out, after we announce our winner, we're also going to review a movie from the draft year 1980, and it's over to you, Derek. You're going to pick a film from 1980, and we're both going to watch it and come back and we're going to review it next week. So what movie would you like me to watch?
I want you to watch my personal pick, The Shining.
Oh,
directed by Stanley Kubrick. Again, horror. We'll call it a horror. Not a genre we do very often on this show. But we do have a knack for picking movies by very famous and successful directors, and Kubrick obviously is one of the best directors ever, and arguably, and it's based on a Stephen King book, which King himself has gone on record saying he was not a big fan of the movie adaptation, but I've learned to love this movie. It scared the crap out of me as a kid, and honestly, I haven't seen it in a while, so I'm kind of looking forward to sitting down and watching it start to finish in one sitting, and we'll come back next week and talk all about it.
I am really looking forward to doing this because I have never actually in one sitting sat down and watched the whole movie from beginning to end. I've seen it in chunks here and there. The one thing that I always remember as a kid was I used to go to the movies in 1980 all the time. Every weekend I go to the movies. And I remember the trailer for it was an elevator. And it was just like a lobby, and there's an elevator, and then the whole room started filling up with blood. It was like flowing in like an ocean of blood. And I was like, oh. And then I remember watching parts of the movie. I was like, that scene's not in there. Like, what is that? I don't understand. I was really confused by it in a lot of ways. And I was 10. I didn't understand kind of metaphors and things like that in film. But I don't know. So I've never actually sat down and watched the whole thing. I've seen most of it in chunks. But it was on the movie network back when I was younger, and I'd watch bits and pieces here and there and kind of piece the movie together, but never seen it all in one sitting. So I'm looking forward to it. That's gonna be good.
Well, and it's been parodied, and movies have borrowed from it and done homages to various scenes from it. And so for me, it's one of those movies where I have a hard time when I do sit down to watch it now, not thinking of things like The Simpsons, for example, did a Halloween episode that was a parody of The Shining.
They called it The Shinning, didn't they?
Yeah. You want to get sued? And the movie we did a while back, Ready Player One, in the movie adaptation of Ready Player One, there's a whole sequence about the movie The Shining, which was not in the novel, but was done for the movie. So again, it's hard for me when I go back and watch these originals that I haven't seen in such a long time, not remembering the more recent parodies, homages, movies that have been influenced by it. So I am looking forward, though, to going back and just watching it through. So I think we'll have a good time with it next week.
Looking forward to it. Okay, so we're going to come back next week. We're going to watch The Shining. We're going to review it. We're going to find out who won the 1980 Pop Culture Fantasy Draft as well. So we got a lot to get to. So until then, this is Chris McBrien on behalf of myself and Derek Myers saying thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.